Good evening, Namaste. Welcome to the York Festival of Ideas podcast in conjunction with Jaipur Literature Festival. My name is Supriya Nagarajan. I am a composer, singer, and also the artistic director of Manasamitra, a South Asian arts organization based in Dewsbury, West Yorkshire. Today I'll be presenting Sita, Princess of Mithila. Sita, or goddess Sita, as she is described in the epic Ramayana, is one of the central figures depicting womanhood in all its glory. She is depicted as being patient, stoic, determined, and also as beautiful, radiant, graceful, and the epitome of womanhood. In this podcast, I will explore through lyrics, both in Sanskrit and other Indian languages, as well as in song and in a little bit of narrative form, the life of Sita. This will be divided into 4 different segments. The first segment will be about Sita and her birth in the kingdom of Mithila as the adopted daughter of King Janaka. The second exploration will be about Sita as a young woman choosing her bridegroom, the radiant Lord Rama, through a Swayamvara process. The third will be a depiction of Sita as the ideal wife who follows Lord Rama into the forest for 14 years, is kidnapped by the 10-headed demon Ravana, walks through fire to prove her chastity and purity, and emerges at the other end. The final depiction will be of Sita as the Queen of Ayodhya. I will today be using lyrics written by Arjun Bharadwaj in Sanskrit specially for this podcast. I will also be singing some songs written by the Trinity and Doyens of South Indian classical music, and I will also be talking a little bit about the enigmatic Sita. So sit back and enjoy this podcast, and do let us have your views on the comment section of the YouTube link on which this podcast is being held. If there are any questions we could answer, I'm happy to do that in the comment section. But otherwise, as I said, sit back and enjoy the podcast. So with that prayer to Lord Ganesha, let me tell you about how Goddess Sita was born. A long time ago in the kingdom of Mithila, there was a king, Janaka, who was loved and beloved of all of his subjects. He was kind, compassionate, caring, and he treated everybody around him with respect. So when Lord Vishnu was looking around, to take his next avatar on earth, to establish the role of a Uttama Purushan or ideal man, and wanted to establish amongst the mind of all humankind the ideologies and the methodologies of how an ideal man would be. That was when his consort, Goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, decided she would accompany him onto earth and stand by his side while he lived the life of an ideal man. And hence, she decided to take the place of Sita, or give herself the identity of Sita in the kingdom of Mithila, with King Janaka being her adopted father. So how did this happen? King Janaka performed a lot of religious rituals supporting the saints and all the religious folk in his kingdom. During one such event, there was a divine voice that arose from the fire. That divine voice advised King Janaka to go out into the fields at the furthest northern corner of his kingdom and plough the field with his golden plough. The voice added, "The greatest treasure known to mankind is what you will find in this piece of land." Having heard the divine voice, King Janaka followed and obeyed his instincts. Along with all his subjects, he rode to the furthest northern corner of his kingdom. He took out the golden plough and himself plunged it onto the earth at the designated spot. As the earth split, King Janaka heard a child's gurgle, a gurgle of happiness, a gurgle of contentment. And when he looked into the cleaved earth, he saw a little girl, a radiant little girl, a radiant child, in the embrace of Mother Earth, smiling at him, with eyes shaped like lotus and face radiant with divinity. Instantly, King Janaka adopted Sita as his daughter. That was the birth of Goddess Sita, also known as Mithili of the kingdom Mithila, Janaki, daughter of King Janaka, and also Bhumija, daughter of Mother Earth, Bhoomi. So what happened when Sita was born? Prabodhaya Ramya Gunan Janakatmaji Kshamam Titiksha Sahishnuta Kshamam Titiksha Sahishnuta Kshamam Titiksha Sahishnuta Prabodhaya Ramya Gunan जनकात्मजे 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 Sita. With Sita was born steadfastness, tolerance, daughter of Mother Earth, epitome of womanhood, Goddess Sita. Yaghya Bhoomi Sambhuta Divya Jana Rupa Adhyatmanishta Rupati Nripati Nandini Nripati Nandini Brahma Kshatra Gonupeta Gonupeta Sarvaloka Manohara Sarvaloka Manohara Shuddha Chitta Satvashila Suddha Chitta Satvashila Mithila Hridayanandakarini Mithila Hridayanandakarini Sita, born of the golden plough. Sita, in every heart of Mithila, she reigned, and when Sita smiled, the people of Mithila smiled with her, and so did nature. So hence was born Sita, the beloved of Mithila. In fact, all the mothers in Mithila wanted to be able to sing to Sita, sing her to sleep, rock her cradle. Lali lalai lali Lali lalai lali Lali gunashali vanamali sukh teyana Lali mridudarhamsa dhuli kashaya na Bhagavad sevalo padaliyurnavu ರಾಗವಿರಹಿತನನ್ನು ಮರಕದ ಪೊಯ್ಯೇವೋ ಬಾಗೈನ ಜನಕಜ ಭಾಗ್ಯಮಾನೀವೋ ತ್ಯಾಗರಾಜುನಿ ನಿನ್ನು ಕೃತ ಶಯನ The next phase of Sita's life that we will look at is Sita as a young woman growing up in the kingdom of Janaka. Certain sections, certain versions of the Ramayana describe Sita as demure, graceful, a perfect princess, learning the arts and the science, but also learning the nuances of warfare. In the ancient days, both princes and princesses were given equal training in the ways of the war. So Sita, it is rumored, had the ability to lift and string the bow of Shiva, something that no other person, no other man in the kingdom could do. She was strong. Just as she was demure, she was strong. So when it came time for King Janaka to seek an alliance for Sita, she was given the absolute choice to select the person she was going to spend the rest of her life with. So King Janaka organized a Swayamvara, and one of the conditions of the Swayamvara was that whoever sought to marry Sita would have to lift and string the bow of Shiva in the kingdom. Now, Sita could do this, so they expected somebody to be able to do it effortlessly, to match her skills, her beauty, and her intelligence. Kings and princesses from all over India were invited to vie for the hand of Sita and Swayamvara. Into this equation came the young prince Lord Rama. Sage Vishwamitra decided to bring both the young princesses, Rama and Lakshmana, to the Swayamvara. They had just finished defeating the demoness Tataka, who was disturbing Sage Vishwamitra's prayers. And on their way back to Ayodhya, Sage Vishwamitra, of course with foresight, decided to bring the two young princes to the Swayamvara. There is also a story that says that Princess Sita and her friends were in the garden at Mithila on the day before. Sita, very thoughtful, would she be able to find her prince? Would anybody be able to actually even lift the bow of Shiva? Who would it be that would be able to take her place by her side? So, Sita, amidst the birds and the deer and the butterflies and the flowers of Mithila, was also steeped in thought. She didn't notice that her friends had walked a distance. As she turned, she spotted a young, regal-looking man sat looking at the lake, pondering about nature. As she even gazed upon his face, the radiance, the calm that came out of Lord Rama, who it was, completely enraptured her. Before she could watch and observe this young man, her friends came back and she had to go back to the kingdom in preparation for the Swayamvara that was happening the very next day. But stories say that that was Sita's first glimpse of Lord Rama, and already there were some seeds of Cupid in her heart. Other stories say that Lord Rama also glanced at Sita as she was ushered away by her friends and maids, and Cupid struck his heart as well. But the reality is that the Swayamvara happened the very next day, and the only prince who could actually even lift the bow of Shiva was Lord Rama, and the rest is history. Sita had her chosen Lord, Lord Rama, and the epic Ramayana had begun to take shape. Rama and Sita were wed. Sita Kalyana Rama Kalyana Prathamajastuti Patra Pavana Charitra Ravi Somavara Netra Ramaniya Gatra Sita Kalyana Vaibhogame Rama Kalyana Sita is thus described. Tarunya Runodaya Tarunya Runodaya Neelakuntala Neelakuntala Charulochana Charulochana Sumadhyama Madhubashika Sumadhyama Madhubashika Manorama Sakala Hamsagamini Manjuhasini Hamsagamini Kalyani Dharma Vivekini Shivadhanuru Vahini Shivatmika Dhanashila Karma Yoga Nuchara Charubhu Bhangalasini Vila She's described as the one with the sweetest tongue, one with the grace of a swan, and the true warrior princess who could lift the bow of Shiva. Various descriptions for Goddess Sita, all appropriate, all describing her beauty, her grace. And thus ended the segment with Sita being married to Lord Rama and forming one half of the ideal couple the world has known, Rama and Sita. After the Swayamvara, when Sita and Rama returned to Ayodhya, due to various reasons, Lord Rama was banished to the forests by his father, Dasharatha, at the behest of his favorite queen, Kaikeyi, who was keen to see her son Bharata rule Ayodhya and not Lord Rama. Rama, graceful as ever, wanted to pay full heed to his father's wishes and to the wishes of his mother Kaikeyi. So he decided that he would spend 14 years in the forest. His brother Lakshmana stepped in to accompany him, to protect him and take care of him whilst he was in the forest. And Sita, his wife, immediately renounced everything that was known to her as being luxurious. She gave up her jewels, her silk clothes, her soft beds, and in simple cotton garments, she accompanied Lord Rama into the Panchavati forests and began a peaceful existence. Amongst the flowers, the birds, and the different animals that were in the forest, they set up an ashram where Lord Rama spent his days praying. Lakshmana around to protect him from any wild elements, and Sita being his companion. Sita, who was used to the luxury of the palaces from the time she was born, was very comfortable and tolerant and philosophical as the young wife who wanted to stand beside her husband. This is the Sita that is described in this next verse. Raghava Sahadharmacharini. Raghava meaning Lord Rama. Raghava Sahadharmacharini. She who shares 50% of all the karma or the work that Lord Rama has to undertake. Raghava Sahadharmacharini Panchavati Nivasini Panchavati Nivasini Panchavati Nivasini Panchavati Nivasini Vanya Kusuma Bharana Bhushita Vanya Kusuma Bharana Bhushita Valkala Vastravrita Valkala Vastravrita Valkala Vastravrita Prakrita Saundharya Sara Prakrita Saundharya Sara लज्जित मृगनयन शुभा लज्जित मृगनयन 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 शोभा स्पर्धित मयूरलास्य स्पर्धित मयूरलास्य भ्रमर चुम्बिता धरोष्टा भ्रमर 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 चुम्बिता धरोष्टा भ्रमर चुम्बिता धरोष्टा भ्रमर चुम्बिता धरोष्टा हेमवती इंद्ररूपा हेमवती हेमवती in the midst of this natural paradise, this tiny world that they had created for themselves, came Lord Ravana, the 10-headed demon god, also known as the Vainika, the person who played the veena beautifully, and the worshipper of Lord Shiva. However, fate led him to this ashram, and it is said that when he laid eyes on Sita, he felt a deep longing, a longing that would destroy his kingdom and clan. Coveting another man's wife was a wrong that would destroy him. But what followed was that he kidnapped Goddess Sita. He deceived her. He encouraged her to step out and beyond that invisible line that Lakshmana had drawn in front of the ashram, the Lakshman Rekha. That's the whole story within itself. But as soon as Sita stepped past the Lakshman Rekha, which is symbolic of stepping past boundaries, the boundaries that every woman creates for herself. So as soon as Sita stepped past the boundary line, Ravana kidnapped her. He put her in his Pushpaka Vimanam, or his chariot, and flew her to Sri Lanka, far, far away, past the south of the India tip, and held her in the Ashokavana, among the Ashoka trees, with the Rakshashis or the demons guarding her. Into this came Lord Rama with his army of Vanaras, led by Sugriva, the king of the Vanaras, as well as Hanuman, devotee and advisor to Lord Rama. And together they created a bridge between South India and Sri Lanka to try and rescue Goddess Sita. Hanuman flew ahead to find out how Goddess Sita was faring in the Ashokavana. And although he did offer to bring her back to Lord Rama on his shoulders, Sita refused. She was confident that Lord Rama would come and righteously rescue her after fighting Ravana and destroying his army. A battle of ego, so to speak. Hanumane sami kintadayalam sollayya. Hanumane sami kintadayalam sollayya. Hanumane sami kintadayalam sollayya. Hanumane samikinta adayalam sollayya. Hanumane Janakilangai sirayil Janakilangai sirayil Janakilangai sirayil tan uyirai தானே தின்று மனதில் ரமரித்த ஜீவனம் செய்திருக்கிறாள் என்று மனதில் ரமரித்த ஜீவனம் செய்திருக்கிறாள் என்று அனுமானே சாமி கிந்தடையாளம் சொல்லையா. அனுமானே கனமான கங்கை கரை வனவேடன் முன் எங்களை காட்டி இவர் யாரென்று கேட்டாயோ குஹனே. கனமான கங்கை கரை வனவேடன் முன் எங்களை காட்டி இவர் யாரென்று கேட்டாயோ குஹனே. உனது தம்பி எனது தம்பி உன் கொழுந்தி இவள் தானோ உன்னாசை தோழனென்று சொன்னாரே ககனே. அனுமானே சாமி கிந்தடையாளம் சொல்லையா. அனுமானே So followed the tale of Sita. Lord Rama, after a hard battle, vanquished the 10-headed demon Ravana. He also vanquished all his clan. Of course, there were trials and tribulations along the way. His brother Lakshmana nearly died, and it was only because of Hanuman flying across and getting the Sanjeevani herb from a mountain top far, far away that Lakshmana could be rescued. But in spite of all this, truth and good triumphed over evil, and Lord Rama vanquished Ravana. But Sita's troubles were not over at that point. After Sita was rescued, she had to undergo a trial by fire. More about that in a minute. Let us first look at Sita's steadfastness and commitment when she was abducted. दुष्टदशकण्ठ पहरुता कष्ट सहिष्णुता धीरव्रता कष्ट सहिष्णुता पतिव्रता 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 निजकान्तात्मिका रक्षिता किल सद्गुणैः सदा रक्षिता किल सद्गुणैः सदा पतिव्रता निजकान्तात्मिका रक्षिता किल सद्गुणैः सदा सद्गुणैः सदा. That was the episode of Lord Rama going across to Lanka to rescue Goddess Sita from the Ashokavana, where she had been kept by Ravana and the Rakshashis or the demonesses that were guarding her. Sita remained steadfast, committed, and true to her one and only Lord Rama. But yet, when Sita was rescued, before she took the rightful place beside Lord Rama as the queen consort of Ayodhya, she had one more test to pass. And that test was walking through fire to prove her purity and chastity. Fire is considered the cleanser of all in the Hindu tradition. And Sita had to walk through the fire and come out unscathed at the other end. Spare a thought for Sita, the princess, the adopted daughter of King Janaka, the warrior princess, the demure, beautiful, graceful maiden who selected Lord Rama as a consort during the Swayamvara, the wife and queen who decided to follow her husband into the forest for 14 years and give up all the luxuries of the kingdom. The very same Sita who crossed the boundary line set by Lakshmana, the Lakshman Rekha, to give alms to a mendicant who was infirm and hungry. Little did she know that it was Lord Ravana disguised as a mendicant. And that probably was the one thing that Sita did that one would consider as stepping beyond the boundary. But she did it because she was compassionate. So she was not only beautiful and divine and graceful, she was also stoic, determined, courageous, and compassionate. In Ashokavana, she was constantly troubled by Ravana, who used every trick in the book. He tried to entice her. He tried to frighten her. He tried to bully her. And yet Sita remained determined and committed and waited for Lord Rama to come and rescue her from Lanka. Imagine for a minute that Sita, after her rescue, would have felt completely jubilant. But no, she had yet one more task, one more test to pass. And that test was walking through the fire to prove her chastity before she could take the place as Queen Consort of Ayodhya beside Lord Rama. And she did that with grace and dignity. And she did come out unscathed at the other end. Sari ma pa ni sa ni sa ni sa ni pa ma ri re ma pa ma pa ni sa ni sa ri sa ni sa pa ni ma pa re ma re sa ni sa ri sa ni. Agnina parishodita Agnina parishodita Rama Hridaya Nivasini Rama Hridaya Nivasini Rama Hridaya Nivasini Pattabhishekta Janaranjani Pattabhishekta Janaranjani Ramarajya Vilasini Ramarajya Vilasini Natupai bali ke runarulu Sri Rama natupai bali ke runarulu Sri Rama natupai bali ke runarulu Sri Rama natupai bali ke runarulu Sri bali ke runarulu Veda sannuta bhavamu verule Veda sannuta bhavamu verule राजानुबाहुयुगे श्रीजानकीपतिपयोजक्ष श्रीत्याग राजनुतचरण पयोजक्ष श्रीत्याग राजनुतचरण ई जगतिलो निन्नु पूजिंचु वारिन व्याजमूल व्रोजुचु राजुनी वारिन नातुपै बलिके ऋणरुलु श्रीराम नातुपै बलिके ऋणरुलु. So we come to the end of the podcast. We have looked at Sita in her different forms. Sita, born of the golden plough, Divya Jana Rupa, Mithila Hridaya Nandakarini, the one who resides in the heart of every subject of Mithila. We also looked at her as Hamsagamini, graceful as a swan, and Madhubhashika, the one with the sweetest of tongues and the sweetest of voices. She was also Rama Priyasaki, beloved friend of Lord Rama, not only his wife but his beloved friend. She also looked beautiful in the garments of nature. Prakrita Saundarya Sara. She was a Pativrita, totally faithful to her husband. And she was also a Satguni, full of good qualities. And finally, she was Ramarajya Vilasini, the queen of the kingdom that Rama ruled over. I hope you enjoyed this journey with Sanskrit lyrics, some songs, and a little bit of narration into the life of Sita, Princess of Mithila. It is great to be able to bring a podcast such as this to the York Festival of Ideas in conjunction with Jaipur Literature Festival. It's my pleasure to be able to compose these beautiful lyrics written by Arjun Bharadwaj, as well as have musical support from Karen DeFlight on the flute, Mark Leighton Bennett on the percussions, and putting it all together is sound artist and designer Duncan Chapman. Until next time, thank you. Hope you had a good time. And if you have any questions, please do pop it in the chat box on the YouTube video. Thank you very much and good night.